Hey, what's up, everybody? Eddie Gallagher here. As you guys know, one of my main priorities is taking care of my family and helping others take care of theirs. I spend a lot of time at the local range here teaching people how to control certain situations and get out of them safely. But the reality is, there are certain situations, such as natural disasters, that we cannot control, which is why I've partnered up with My Patriot Supply. When these emergencies come, they usually come without warning, and the supplies that you need should be within reach, ready to go at a moment's notice. You can secure these supplies at preparewitheddy.com and start off with a 4-week emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. If you act now, you can save $50 off of every 4-week emergency food kit. These emergency food kits provide up to 2,000 calories per day and can last up to 25 years. Once again, go on preparewitheddy.com and save up to $50 per kit. Thank you and God bless. Welcome back to Shoot Me Straight with Eddie and Dave. Today we have a very special guest, one that I've been looking forward to talking to for quite some time now. We've been trying to find a date to get him on here over the past month, and we're definitely honored that he was able to come down here this week. Very controversial figure, which I can relate to. It's controversial is just a word that is used by a certain group. We don't find him controversial at all.
I don't find you controversial.
Yeah, so we're definitely going to have a good conversation. But Kyle Rittenhouse, thank you for coming here, and thank you for sitting down with us and having a conversation. Yeah, it's an honor.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I'm sure most people, probably recognize your name, and it's I've been, talking to some family and friends saying that you're possibly coming on, and it's funny. You bring your name up, and people's, look up, and I see them like, oh, I know that name. Like, where do I know that name from? And I'm like, oh, it's the kid. Was it 3 years ago now?
We're coming up on 4 years.
Dude. It's hard to keep track of time.
August 25th, 2020.
Yeah. So almost 4 years ago, during the
Summer of Love.
Summer of Love, the BLM riots, George Floyd, all of that, right?
Yeah. I was telling a friend the other day, feels like what's happening now with all these Hamas terrorists protesting at these universities kind of reminding me of like 2020 in a way.
Yes. So
like the violence just picking up.
Well, it's election season, and
Yep.
Unfortunately, this is where our country has headed. Is during every election season, it just gets crazier and crazier, and you do have paid agitators to cause disruption, to cause chaos, to distract you from what is about to happen, which is the
Yep.
election. And yeah, just you said it perfectly. With the recent Hamas pro-Palestinian protesting going on at these college campuses, and I believe they just found out that I think it was a Columbia University that 90% of them were paid agitators to go in there, and they actually were not, pro-Palestinian college students. These people were in there to cause chaos.
Who's funding these people?
Well, I think that is the question that the country needs answered. That it's a question that we've all been asking even since your incident.
That is very true.
We could probably go down a rabbit hole of, who's funding this. I mean, obviously you get the same names pop up, George Soros, and among many others. And then you also invite in the foreign influence. That's because that's their job. They want to disrupt what's going on in America and keep us at odds with each other. But yeah, I'm sure that money's coming in from different funnels for sure. But we never can say for sure because nothing ever comes out that's fact. And then nowadays it's hard to believe anything that you hear, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And I know you can relate to that.
Absolutely. Even when something says fact checked, I'm like, hey, let's read
Fact
into
checked by who?
Exactly.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So I got a question for you. Did you know of Eddie's experience? Because yours was right before his. Because yours is about 5.5 years ago, right?
Yeah, mine was in 2018, correct.
We actually have a mutual friend. His name is Adam. I'm not going to say his last name, but he helped with a lot of your stuff with when your stuff was going on with like making shirts or something. He writes all my emails, so he did my email list.
I know who you're talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah, we've been in conversation with him through our
Yeah.
foundation
Yeah.
Because I think when your stuff popped off, we had reached out and just said, "Hey, what can we do to like help this kid out?" Because we knew, exactly what you were going through, and I think Adam was going back and forth with our executive director for our nonprofit. So yeah.
Yep. But yeah, Adam's a great friend of mine, and that's how I learned about who you were, because I was, 15, 16, 2018, I was 15, and I wasn't paying attention to the news. I had no idea who you were when your trial
Yeah.
happened.
As you shouldn't. You should be living the life of a 15-year-old.
Exactly. Too many 15-year-olds nowadays are so distracted on their phones and
Oh yeah.
watching TikTok. And I have the unpopular belief, I'm okay if TikTok gets banned, because I see what it's doing to our children. And I'm just like, no, I am okay if we take that away, because one, it's run by China, and two, I'm tired of going on an airplane with the 12-year-old in front of me who doesn't know how to turn their AirPods down, scrolling through TikTok. I'm just ready for that app to be gone.
There's, you know what? I have mixed feelings about it. I'm on the side where you're at, where I'm like, maybe it'll be a good thing, because I don't think social media in general is good. I think it's, obviously it can be used as a tool for good.
Absolutely.
But I think there's more cons than pros when it comes to it. But I also do believe in the First Amendment, and I think it's your right to, if you want to put something out there, and it's also your right to believe whatever you want to believe.
Absolutely.
So there is that conundrum going
Yeah.
on with that. I think if we ban TikTok, that's going to set a precedent to what else are they going to ban now? And it's all like, if you have to sit back and think, why does this current administration want to ban TikTok?
That is true.
Because what they call is like, it's spreading disinformation, which you can break that down to, they're putting out stuff that this administration does not want put out. They don't want people believing a certain way or thinking a certain way. And let's face it, social media has a lot of control on the way people think. But that comes to self-accountability, right? You have to be accountable for what you believe, for what you say. That is part of the First Amendment as well. So, you do have those two things. I do think that there should be some sort of restriction for the youth, the way they are allowed to use social media. But I don't know what the correct answer is, for sure.
Yeah. Sometimes I think it may just be like a parenting issue.
I think it's, you hit the nail on the head right there. Everything comes down to a parenting issue.
Yep.
Yeah. You can control what your kids watch, what your kids listen to, what your kids say in your household.
Yep.
From my perspective, I think I do think parenting issue on that. But what's so interesting to me is I had two people that both had nationally known trials for their life, and pretty close to the same time period. You're a little bit younger than Eddie,
Just a little bit. Yeah.
but like, just the commonalities between you two.
Yeah. That's what I really want to like start diving into, I guess, because watching you go through what you did, your face being plastered all over the media, all over the world, right? I mean, your case was, I don't know how many people were tuned in watching, and it was aired, I mean, publicly,
it was
right? You could watch.
nationally aired. It was live on cable TV, YouTube,
Yep.
TikTok.
TikTok, yeah, I mean, all of it. And it was, it was the current distraction. It was like, focus on this. And I think I viewed it, in a different manner than most. I think people were watching you like, oh, is he guilty, not guilty? Where they were bringing up conversations. I remember listening, and I had friends talking about it on their podcasts, and it was blowing my mind, like the conversations that were being had about you, where it was like, oh, well, yeah, there was riots going on, but should he have gone in there? What was he thinking? Bringing a rifle there, and to me, it was almost the same. I was like having deja vu, because the conversations that were being had were not the ones that should have been being had. It should have been, well, what about these protesters that were out there, with guns, burning the city down, and causing all sorts of violence and chaos. But it was like that swept aside. Oh. Let's focus on Kyle.
Yeah. So one of the things they like to focus on, like why I was there, and they say all these things about how I got there, and then a lot of these lies, but nobody really wants to talk about how Joseph Rosenbaum was there, how he was arrested a few days prior for domestic violence for beating up his fiance, then admitted to a mental hospital while in jail. On August 25th, he was released from that mental hospital in downtown Kenosha, then walked 3 miles to Carrie-Ann Schwartz's house, his ex-girlfriend, fiance. She said, you can't be here. There was an active restraining order. So he already violated that restraining order, then walked back to the downtown Kenosha where the riots were happening to wreak havoc. And nobody's talking about that, how a man who is unmedicated, and from the trial, what we learned is he wasn't given his medication that day, how he was on the streets and how he's just released in the middle of downtown Kenosha with all the violence happening.
Yep. And that's the narrative that the media wanted to put out there, right?
Yep.
And more than anybody how the media lies and spins stories and cannot. But the problem is the media has such a hold on this country, and the way they sort of force people to think a certain way, or they do, in a way, force people to think a certain way, right? And they put out these clickbait headlines and also outright lie to control the narrative and to get people to either A, hate you, or B, if you're talking about Fox News, I guess is the only other media outlet that is sort of the other direction, then they are like, they'll put out stuff to sort of be on your side. But I think both, and this is from my experience going through it, both lie. Both skew the truth a little bit. And so that way, there's 3 sides. There's your side, their side, and the truth, and somewhere in the middle, right?
Yep.
And that is the conundrum that you are put into in a situation like this. And there's not that many people out there that know what that's like. And it's hard to actually articulate that when you are going through it to people, like, hey, this is the way the system works. And you drink through a fire hose, right, as you're going through it, and you find out just how corrupt, both sides can be.
Yep.
And you are sort of a football in the middle being tossed back and forth.
Absolutely. And you experienced it a lot, most likely. I wasn't following much when your stuff was going on. People will come out from nowhere and they'll be like, hey, I'm this nice guy, I'm going to help you. And then you end up getting stabbed in the back. And then you're also getting railed by the media. You're getting lies told about you. And then you're dealing with all of this stuff on top of it, of potentially facing life in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there is, this is what I find so interesting, Kyle, is I don't know if there's another person. I mean, I get to know you, we could be friends, but I don't know what that was like. I've never experienced.
It sucked.
He does.
It does suck, yeah.
He does. I don't know if there's another person that can really relate to you like Eddie.
Yeah, which is why I've been excited for you to come on here, man.
But
there's a difference though. Eddie went through it. One of the biggest differences, Eddie went through it as a grown man, and you went through it as 17 years old.
Yep.
So I mean, there's from my side, there's some compassion of like, oh man, but having someone like Eddie and getting to know him, man, what a resource.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's just. I know you go around and give talks about everything and what happened. So I don't want to like go into the whole story. And you do have a book out, right, about it.
Yeah.
You want to go ahead and plug that real quick?
Sure. Yeah, I have a new book. It's titled Acquitted, and that one really offended the left. But it's like a dive into my life. It goes into a little bit about what happened on that night, but it's really about how I grew up and how I had a mom who worked 80-hour weeks and a drug addict dad, and just like that type of stuff of where I started, what happened, who I am, and like what I do. And
Yeah.
it's available at rittenhousebook.com.
Okay. And it's called Acquitted.
Acquitted.
You do have another book, right? Before that, or no? Was that the only book?
That's the only one.
Okay, sorry.
There may be a children's book. I'm just kidding.
That's not a bad idea.
Oh, it's been an inside joke with me and some of my buddies at work. Like you should write a children's book and like about like gun safety.
There you go. I don't want to like go and we don't have to go into detail about everything that occurred that day, but if you could give like sort of a brief overview for some of our listeners who might not know the whole story, and or as some of them that just watch the headlines and they just have a certain view of what happened. If you could give like a broad overview of the day, why you went down there, what you were doing down there, and then sort of the incident itself, and we can go from there.
Yeah, so August 25th, August 23rd, Jacob Blake was shot in the back. What happened was there was a 911 call saying, like, I don't remember what the call was for, but Jacob Blake had this knife, this Karambit knife, and he was getting in the car, disobeying police officer commands after being tased, and then Jacob Blake went to go try to stab the officer, reaching from behind, so the officer drew a service pistol and put 7 rounds in him, and Jacob Blake lived. He's now paralyzed, but the media twisted it. They were like, unarmed black man shot. BLM went crazy, and they started rioting and burning the city down.
And this is taking place where?
In Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And I'm watching this all unfold on social media the 23rd and 24th. I worked the 24th, and then I end up going to stay the night in downtown Kenosha at a friend's house because I ended up implementing this curfew, and I couldn't leave the county. So I went to my buddy's house and then stayed there. And then the next morning, we went, and the morning of the 25th, the day the shooting happened, we went and started cleaning graffiti off the schools and helping people board up their businesses. And then we met the brothers of the business I was protecting that night, the Kahindri brothers, Sam and Sal, and we offered our help, and they said, okay. And then they asked us to come back that night. So we said, okay, we'll be back later on in the evening. And then we went back. I grabbed my rifle. Then we got a call from this guy named Nick Smith who asked if we can go and protect that business, the car source I was at, the one we were just asked. And we said, yeah, they asked us already. And we end up going there, and I am there putting out fires and helping people with first aid. I brought my trauma kit.
What drove you in the first place to go down there to assist and help out these businesses? Like,
just to like help provide first aid and make sure that people's livelihoods weren't burned down, because I don't know if you remember, but everything was on fire in 2020. They burned billions of dollars across the U.S. And I was just like, I'm gonna go help to make sure that nothing gets burned, and I'll put out fires and provide first aid, and that's what I meant by protecting the property.
yeah.
There's a lot of people get confused. Oh, you were protecting property with a gun. No, I wasn't. The gun was to protect myself. And
So the night before, when you were initially there, you didn't have a gun. You were just helping.
No. The night before I wasn't there. I was only there August 25th.
Okay.
I was there in that morning just cleaning
That's
graffiti.
what I meant. So that morning you were cleaning graffiti.
They were all resting up, all the rioters resting up for the next night.
But initially you were down there helping clean up graffiti and clean up, the aftermath of what
Yeah.
happened the night before without a rifle, without anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that owner, he's like, hey, can you come back and help
Yeah.
out tonight? Did he in any way like, hey, you might want to arm yourself because,
No.
or is that just something you took upon yourself? Like, hey, I saw what happened.
Well, every single one of those people had guns,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw that from the videos. I'm like, I can't carry a pistol, and I was like, well, I can carry a rifle because in Wisconsin, the age to carry a rifle is 17,
Yep.
and not a lot of people know that,
Yeah, including Pierce Morgan. Yeah.
including Pierce Morgan. What a dick.
Oh yeah, we can get into that after. Yeah, for sure.
I'm down there protecting the property, putting out fires, helping people with first aid, and then I get a phone call. We'll dive into that in a little bit. There's this guy, as I'm doing this stuff, helping put out fires, who came up to me and said, if I catch you alone, I'm going to fucking kill you. And I was like, oh, I've never had somebody threaten to kill me. He stood out a little bit. He was a bald white dude wearing a mask around his face. And he ended up following through on those threats. He was going to follow through. And later that night, I got a phone call from Dominic Black, and he said, hey, they're setting the car source on fire. I need you to get down there. People will meet you down there to help put it out. Just need you to bring a fire extinguisher. But what I didn't know is I was running into an ambush. I was running down there, and what they were doing was Rosenbaum was hiding behind this black Duramax, and then Josh Zeminski and Kelly Zeminski were at the front, and then there's a couple people behind. So I get there to go put out that fire, and Mr. Zeminski, he's armed with a handgun. He takes a step towards me, and I take a step back, and then Mr. Rosenbaum runs out from hiding and starts chasing me. So I start running and retreating, and I am running towards like my left-hand side. He throws something at me. I address him and aim down on him, and that doesn't stop him. He just throws his hands up briefly, keeps going, screams, fuck you, and then Zeminski fires a shot at me. And I then turn around after I'm being cornered in between like 4 cars that are lined up like this, and then like 5 cars in the back with about 200 people armed with knives, bats, and guns. So I have nowhere to go, turn around, and then I am in a fight with Rosenbaum. His hands are on my gun, so I pull my gun away from him, and he keeps going, and that's when I shoot him, and I shoot him 4 times.
You were on your back at this time?
No.
Okay.
This is the first incident.
Okay.
Then I run around the vehicle, and then these mob of rioters form, and they're saying, get him, kill him. And I'm like, oh shit, like they just tried to kill me. I'm gonna get out of here and get to the police line, because that's where I was originally trying to go first. I'm running and running to the police line, and then there's this guy, Gage Grosskreutz, and he asked me, hey, where are you going? And I tell him, I'm going to the police. And you can see it in the videos, the red and blue lights, and
Yep.
I tell him I'm going to the police. I had to do it, and I just keep running, and then I get hit in the back of the head with a skateboard by Anthony Huber, then hit in the back of the head with a rock by this guy in this white wife beater. And that causes me to stumble and hit the ground. And then once I'm on the ground, I have like 4 or 5 people around me, and I address all of them, and they all back up. Besides one, and that's Jump Kick Man. We call them in the trial the uncomplaining, unidentified witness, because he never came forward. He continues running, and doesn't stop. So I fire 2 shots at him, and I miss. And he ends up kicking me dead center in the face and the nose, bashing my head into the back of the concrete. Then once I'm on the ground, immediately after, Anthony Huber comes in for his second attack, puts his knees in my chest, grabs my gun, and drives a skateboard into my head. I shoot him, and he died. And then after that, Gage Grosskreutz, the guy who I told I was going to the police, comes up, and he's armed with the Glock pistol, and it's aimed down at my head. So I address him, and then he puts his hands up. I lower my rifle. As soon as I lower my rifle, he starts moving again, and that's when I move up and I shoot him, and I hit him in the bicep, And then he starts running off, and I didn't fire any more shots after that.
Okay. And you are 17 years old at this time.
Yeah.
Correct. And these are grown men
Yeah.
chasing you down, beating you with skateboards.
37, 27, 28.
Yep. And waving guns in your face, threatening your life.
Jeez. I didn't realize that that before you had fired a shot, you were shot at first. Like there was a shot at you first.
Yep. I was shot at first, and then I was shot at after after the Rosenbaum shooting. There was about 4 or 5 shots after. I was experienced audio, whatever you call it, to where I couldn't hear it all.
Yep.
And I didn't hear that until I saw the videos. I heard the first shot, but there was 3 shots after, and some guy popped up over a vehicle and started popping rounds at me. And it's a good training video thing to show people because, like, this is why you aim. You don't blind fire. 'Cause he didn't
You don't
hit
cock
me.
that gun sideways.
Over the hood of the car.
Yeah.
After I get done defending myself and I'm walking towards the police, there's about 10 or 15 shots coming my direction. And I can just remember getting like my hearing back a little bit because it was in and out. Like it was so weird because I could hear and then I couldn't hear and I can hear again. But then I hear these bullets just zipping past my head, and a bullet makes a very distinct sound when it goes past your head, I learned.
It's a hiss or a snap.
Yep. It was a hiss. I heard a hiss.
A hiss is when, it's not directly at you. Obviously they're shooting at you, but they're maybe going overhead or wherever. A snap is they've got you dead to rights, and it's sooner
That's a
than
bad
later that
day.
one of them's going to hit you. Yeah. Find cover.
Yeah. Get to the police car. I have my hands up. I tell the officer what happened. I say, hey, I just shot somebody. His adrenaline was pumping. He didn't hear me. He ended up pepper spraying me and telling me to go home. So I went home. And
Who pepper sprayed you? I'm sorry.
the cops.
The cops,
And
okay.
that was the second time I was pepper sprayed. I was pepper sprayed earlier that night, and Elijah Schaefer interviewed me right after that. Or not interview me, but he was like, what's going on here? And I was like, I was just pepper sprayed. Please stay off the property. And then I get home, I meet my family there, and then we go to Antioch Police Department to turn myself in.
So let's stop there. I'm sorry. So you get home, you tell your family like, hey, this is what just happened, and then you guys did your parents make the decision, or you make the decision like, hey,
I made the decision.
Okay, so I need to go turn myself in.
Yep. And I would have turned myself in Kenosha, but they were gated up and not accepting visitors.
It doesn't sound like it was the right environment to go turn
Exactly.
yourself in at the time. Yeah.
So I went to Antioch Police Department. I turned myself in. I was there for several hours. Detective showed up from Kenosha, Mirandized me. I invoked my Fifth Amendment rights, just like anybody should do.
Yep.
And I was arrested and charged with first-degree intentional homicide, reckless endangerment of safety, reckless homicide, attempted murder, a bunch of things. And then started the court process and was found not guilty.
So you were arrested right then when you turned yourself in, pretty
Yep.
much, and then they threw
Before an
you.
investigation. So I
Yep.
was arrested before an investigation. Before they didn't even know what they were charging me with, outside of the fact of I came to the police department and said I just had to kill somebody, and that was all that they had on me.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And they threw you in prison
The,
or jail.
They threw me in jail for 87 days. I was at Debke Juvenile Detention Center until October 30th in Illinois, and then I was extradited to Kenosha to face those charges and held on $2 million bail there. And adult jail is not fun, and the food sucks.
Yeah, it is jail.
I mean,
yeah.
it was a great diet, though. I lost so much weight there.
That's a good positive way to look at it.
Yeah, I came out at 150. I was so malnourished.
Oh, yeah. So they send you to juvie first, right, to juvenile detention center. And
Yeah,
then
'cause-
once you turned 18.
Nope.
Nope, they didn't even wait till you turned 18.
In Illinois, every single person under the age of 18 goes to the juvenile center because that's state law.
Yeah.
Wisconsin, if you're tried as an adult, you're staying in adult jail. So
Did they do anything for you in that adult jail to sort of separate you, or like, or
I
is
was
it?
in an isolation pod, so I was by myself in this isolation cell, and there's a TV in there, sink, toilet, shower, desk. Shower didn't work,
Of course.
and I made multiple complaints about that, and they were like, "Well, you got to be up at this certain time to use it." I'm like, "Okay, I'm not waking up at 3:30 in the morning to take a shower."
Yeah.
Because like they said it's only on for a certain time for 5 minutes at this time. I'm like, how am I supposed to know when I don't have an alarm clock?
That sounds like jail to me.
Yeah,
And then, yeah, complaining in there is pretty useless.
yeah,
Complaints are like assholes. Everybody's got one, and they all stink,
exactly.
much like opinions. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's a whole different ecosystem in there, right? You got to sort of figure out how to adapt.
yeah, and it was weird. The smell there just like was disgusting, and I did a ride along. We ended up arresting this dude and took him to the jail, and I went in there and I started gagging because it just brought back like that smell. I'm just like, oh, this is miserable.
Yeah,
And all jails smell the same, I learned.
yeah. Well, I haven't been to any others except the one I was in, but yeah, I can imagine.
Well, how was your experience in jail?
It was.
Rainbows and unicorns, I
Yeah,
assume.
it's like we talked about. It's a different ecosystem. It's not a fun place to be, and like you said, yeah, not everything works in there. The facilities suck. The food sucks. You don't get fed a lot, and complaining about any of that is pretty much useless. And I remember being in there complaining, like, hey, like they shut the water off for 2 weeks, or you weren't getting fed enough, and then you complain. They're just like, yeah, whatever, fuck off. And then you realize, like, well, I am in prison. Like, what am I expecting here? Like, I'm not expecting. This isn't the Ritz, right? I'm not going to have people come down here and, oh yes sir, I'm going to fix your shower. It's like I'm a prisoner. So there is that aspect to it, but knowing that you shouldn't be, and like I'm innocent, much like you, it adds that extra frustration, and you're just like, I can't believe I'm here. But I'm sure just like you had to, right? You're not getting out of that situation, so you can
Exactly.
either sit there and whine and complain
Or
and go
deal
down
with it.
spiral, or adapt and learn how to keep pushing forward, right?
Exactly.
What were you thinking when you were in there?
I tried not to think about the incident at all, because I knew that wasn't the time or place to focus on what happened. I read my Bible a little bit,
Good.
and it was hard to like understand it. So I'm still working on it. I was recently saved in January.
Really?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Congratulations, man.
but is it such a freeing feeling?
Yes, it is.
And the power that comes with that of not caring at all what people say anymore. It's awesome, and just only doing everything in God's eyes.
Oh man, dude, that is like that's awesome to hear that
I
you got saved in January, and that you're now recognizing the power that Jesus has, and that He's the only judge.
Absolutely. So I believed in God in jail, so I'm like, I'm gonna read the Bible. This is gonna really help me. I wasn't able to really process it, and I'm working on it now. I'm in Ephesians right now, reading 1 through 4, and I keep rereading it because I just want to truly understand it and just like, okay, this is
Love
what I need to do, because Ephesians is like how God lived and how He wants you to live, and that's what I'm trying to understand right now. What was your experience like day to day in jail?
So mine was a military prison. So everybody in there is in the military. It's, we still wore our, camouflage uniform, the fatigues, I guess we call them in the military. But it's different. It's all branches. So there's Marines, Army, Navy, Coast Guard. And so when I first got checked in there, they threw me in solitary for about 4 or 5 days. I forget the amount, but and then eventually they came and they're like, "Hey, we're going to release you into Gen Pop," and you have to answer a bunch of questions. Like the big ones were,
Are you suicidal? Are you in fear?
that stuff. And then what do you think about pedophiles, rapists? Do you have problems with them? And I answered yes. And then they're like, well, then we cannot release you into Gen Pop because that's where you're going is with a bunch of pedophiles, convicted pedophiles and rapists. I was in a,
So if you have a problem with a pedophile,
they just don't want you starting any, like, and I kind of understand, like, they're like, hey, you're in here with these people. Like, it doesn't matter. They just don't want you starting any conflict while you're in there. So you sort of, you got to answer like, no, okay, I won't mess with them. But the prison I was in was a 85% sexual offender prison. Like most of the people in there were sexual offenders. And then there's the 15% of us that were in there for different other reasons. And I was in there, obviously, I was the number one prisoner facing life without parole for premeditated murder of an ISIS terrorist. So
bullshit charges.
yeah, it's all, it's all bullshit. And I'm, you've been through it as well. They're going to throw anything to the wall. It's like throwing spaghetti at the wall and like, let's see which we can get one of these to stick.
Yep.
And all of them are gross charges to where they make headlines, premeditated murder. And then they slapped on two more murder charges 3 months when I was 3 months in. But yeah, you get thrown in Gen Pop, and then it's pretty much a daily routine where you get locked down in your cell at night. I believe it was 8:30 or something. I can't remember the exact time. And you're not allowed out until 5 the next day. 5 in the morning, you get up. You have to have everything in your cell, perfect. Rack has to be made, or bed has to be made, and all this stuff. You're standing at attention. They let you out of the cell. You march to breakfast. You have from the person in the front of the line, once he touches the utensils to go start getting his stuff, you have 20 minutes to eat. So if you're in the back of the line, you have like 5 minutes to eat. And then what I've realized is, because I was a pretrial prisoner, they have actual prisoners serving the food that work in the prison. And so if you're pretrial, you're not getting any food because you're not convicted yet. You're not one of us in the prison. So they're giving, and I, rightly so. It's like, hey, okay, this is the way the system works, and this is the way this ecosystem works. But it's like a routine. So you get back, you're not allowed in your cell until that night. So that you have a Gen Pop area with a bunch of chairs and one TV, and you have to sit there all day and sit up straight. They'll come around if you aren't sitting in a way they want you to sit. The guards will mess with you. And then you get 1 hour of outside time, ours was at night. So it was from 7 to 8 before lockdown. So you get to go out in the yard and do some sort of workout or whatever.
Was this facility in the U.S.?
Yeah, so this was in Miramar Marine Corps Air Station in San Diego.
That sounds terrible. Oof.
It's not fun. But I don't think jail anywhere. I don't think anybody that can describe jail in anywhere part of the country or the world could be like, oh yeah, that sounds sort of awesome.
Exactly.
It's jail, right? It's not meant to be fun. It's meant to suck and make you think about your decisions, especially if you were guilty. It's like, hey, this is the consequences of your actions. But just like I'm sure you went through, you're like, I'm stuck in here with a bunch of convicted, you name it, murderers, rapists, this and that. And I'm literally did what I had to do to survive, and I'm innocent.
Exactly.
So that's, I think, the hardest thing. That was the hardest thing for me to deal with too. And that's where I found the Lord as well. I became closer to Christ when I was in there. And I think, I've told the story many times in this podcast, but about a couple months in, I got down on my hands and knees and I gave everything to him. And the power I felt from that going forward is beyond, it's beyond anything that I could even try to like describe or explain. You just feel God carrying you through. And it doesn't matter what's thrown at you. You have this strength about you that you're like, I can handle anything. So yeah, it's It was an experience, that's the way I look at
That's
it.
one word. One word.
Yeah.
Put it.
I mean, that's what life is, right? It's just a bunch of experiences that we all go through. And, for you, and that's for you being 17 years old, 17, I have a 24-year-old son, a 20-year-old daughter, and a 14-year-old son. For you at 17 to go through an experience like that, it can be, we can look at it and be like, that this is wrong. This should have never happened to this kid. He's a child. But the way it happened, right? You went through it, and the way I would look at it is, for you, it's more of a blessing than anything else. You faced, I don't know how much scrutiny. Your face was plastered all over the place. You're still dealing with the repercussions, but that is only going to make you stronger going forward. You are still a young man, and the amount of stuff that you have faced at such an early age, that I would say 90% of men or more have never had to deal with anything like that. You have a strength about you now going forward at such an early age that is going to benefit you more than anybody else. And it's going to not only benefit you, you can then help others that are stuck in certain, similar situations, and be able to mentor them on, hey, how to get through.
There's actually been this kid I've been mentoring.
Good.
I don't know if you saw this video out of LA. There's this young black kid. He was 18 years old. His name is Krishna. He was getting attacked by a bunch of thugs, like 40, 50 people. Drew his firearm and ended up smoking one of the dudes. And I don't know, I haven't talked to him in a couple days, but I don't think they're going to file charges, personal opinion, because it's pretty clear self-defense, or they're just waiting to see what they're going to hit him with. But I've been, talking through him, hey, yeah, you're 18, this sucks. Being attacked by 40, 50 people isn't a fun experience.
Yeah.
And just, spending time with him.
Good. Cool. That's good to hear, man. And speaking of Ephesians and the way Jesus lived, that is one of the ways Jesus lived, was helping others, right? And sharing your experiences, your trauma, and everything that you went through to others that are going through similar situations, and helping build them up, right? And words are powerful. As we can see, negative words are powerful, and so are positive, right?
Yep.
Hate is powerful, so is love.
Yep.
Love will always conquer hate. And if you are spreading that love and those words of encouragement and that mentorship to others, that will help them out more than you know. I know at times you're like, I'm sharing my experiences, but I don't know if this is doing anything. It is. You're making more of a powerful impact now than you would have ever if this had never happened to you.
You may never see the results in some of that stuff too. One thing I was going to say is, do you see this? Eddie's talked about years later, in my experience too, all the stuff I went through and all the stuff he's gone through, you too. God allowed that to happen in order to bring you to himself. That kind of breaking you of yourself, in order to, that's how much he loves you, to allow you to go through something like that in order to bring you back to yourself. Because I don't know if you'd have got out of the military, nothing happened.
My life completely changed. It was,
yeah.
It's the same as yours, right?
Absolutely.
It now puts you on a new trajectory that you could have never even dreamed of or imagined, right? And you heard the saying, God doesn't put anything on your plate he knows you can't handle.
Yep.
Right? So he has a plan for you. It's not your plan.
Absolutely.
It's not your parents' plan. It's not anybody's plan. It's his.
I remind myself that when things get difficult sometimes, all right, God, let's do this.
Yep.
This is your story. This is my life, but you're in control.
Yep, he's going to use you, and he is using you right now to do good things, to spread the word. And I know, and I saw the amount of hate that you get from certain sides.
My fans?
Yeah, your number one fans. That's a worldly. All that is just worldly judgment, and that doesn't matter. his judgment's the only one, right? And
Absolutely.
I will also say this, and this was actually told to me 3 days ago. I did a Bible study with a bunch of guys, and none of them knew my story, which I love, because then you're like, oh, I can actually, be myself, I guess, or not be looked at in a certain way. But they delving into the Bible study, it came out, and the guy told me the next morning. He was like, "Hey, God talked to me about you, and said that the jury did not find you guilty or not guilty. God found you not guilty, and He's the only judge going forward." And that is what you have to learn. And I'm sure you've been through it. Is people's opinions, they don't matter. Their judgment, it does not matter.
Exactly.
You know.
And during my shooting, God was with me the entire night. Like, I have no idea how I survived after being hit in the head so many times, head bashed into concrete, a gun pointed in my face, and like, I have no idea how I'm alive outside of the power of God and Him being with me.
Amen. Let's talk about when you went to trial. All right, because I know that is a whole jail itself is a whole experience, but then the trial, that's a whole separate experience,
Yeah.
right? And I learned that as well too. It's just going into that courtroom. What was your view of going through all that, and
That it was a bunch of bullshit.
it's like theatrics, right?
Like, I felt like it was a game with my life some of the days.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it.
And I would, like, my attorney actually said it in his closing argument, because I looked over and I said to him, "Why are they playing games with my life?" And coming up with all these lies and all this bullshit. And then he was like, "That's a good way to put it."
That is a perfect way to put it. It's theatrics, right?
Yep.
And that's what I was told going into it. You can have all the facts, you can have all the evidence. None of that matters, because it's whoever puts on the best play.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever can put on the best theater in there to drive the jury to vote one way or the
I
other.
was lucky. I had the evidence on my side.
Yeah.
And I went into court every day. It was almost a month-long trial. It was 3.5 weeks. Started November 1st, and I was acquitted November 19th. I woke up, would take my dog out, play ball with him. So my dog is a medically purpose service dog. He helps with my PTSD and stuff that I have from that incident.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just spend some time with him, be like, "Hey, buddy, this may be the last day I see you." And that was hard. But then would go to court, and I would have my security team would drive me in through the Sally Port, and then have to walk through the jail to get upstairs. And then I would be there from like 7:30, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yeah, long days.
And like I would go home at the end and just decompress. And that was hard. That was probably your hardest part, is decompressing during that, because you were still in jail during your trial, right?
No, so
okay.
I was released, I would say a month and a half before my trial, because the prosecution got caught spying on my legal team. They sent out some spyware because I had all the evidence on our side too that proved my innocence, but they had to cheat in order to try and make me, find me guilty. They were trying to get our defense, and so they could use it against us. But they got caught red-handed. In any other civilian case, it would have got thrown out. But because it was a military trial, all they did was they fired that prosecutor and just put in another one. But the reward I got was to be let out of confinement, so that I could be with my family and defend myself before I went to trial.
It makes all the difference when you're out of jail.
Yes, it does.
When you're on trial, and especially facing charges like that. I would go during all this. I would just think during the testimonies, I would take notes and I would pay attention, and my attorneys weren't the brightest when it came to firearms, so I would have to describe some firearm things to them, and then they would have to use it in questioning. And I was just like focused on knowing everything that was happening and just dreading the day of testifying because I knew I was going to have to testify soon. I invoked I, I invoked my Fifth Amendment rights when I was arrested, but I was ready to tell my story to the jury and to the world. I get up on the stand, I take the oath, and I start sharing my story, but then I have a panic attack like halfway through when I started describing what happened, which is weird because I was like, oh, I just had a panic attack on national TV. And I didn't realize, like, I wasn't paying attention to all the cameras. I wasn't focused on being there. My entire world just saw me cry.
That's all right.
Testify, and we go through all this. The state violates my rights when I'm testifying. They ask me why I remained silent, and that's a big no-no.
Why you invoked your Fifth Amendment?
Yep. And they asked why I invoked my Fifth Amendment rights, and they got chewed up by the judge. It was almost, we requested a mistrial with prejudice. We requested a mistrial without and then with, because they did so many things that violated my rights, and they were trying to sabotage the trial. And I personally think they were trying to get a mistrial. They were trying to so they could try it again because they knew they messed up. They said I chased Rosenbaum down and shot him in the back, when in reality he chased me down, and we had it all on video, and they couldn't dispute that. And once we started getting into that, they couldn't backtrack.
Yeah, I did see. I remember part of your trial where is Rosenbaum the one that got shot in the arm?
No, that was Gage Gross.
Sorry. So he took the stand,
Yep.
right? And then he was denying the fact that he had put a pistol in your face
Yeah.
until he got on the stand, and then your lawyer was like, showed the video and was like, is this you pointing a gun in his face or something like that? And he was like, yes.
I mean, he couldn't walk away from that one. It's just like right there. And that was a pretty powerful moment in the trial. He is now backtracking and perjuring himself by going out and saying, well, it actually wasn't pointed at him now.
Yeah,
He
it's
changed
ridiculous.
his name to Paul Prediger.
Paul Prediger?
Yeah. I have thoughts about that name that I'll keep to myself.
Oh, I'm sure.
Then we finished closing arguments. The state used a quote from, I forget what the movie was, but the guy was killed with a one punch kill. What's that movie called?
Oh, is it with Nicolas Cage?
I think so.
Oh, the Con Air?
Not Con Air. No, they used a photo from it in their closing arguments, but then they were saying a single punch can't kill somebody, but in that movie, somebody was killed with a one punch in the bar.
I thought that was Con Air, but yeah, I could be wrong.
It could be.
Yeah.
Those were closing arguments, and then I'm waiting for verdict, and the jury took like 3-4 days to come back with a verdict.
Oh, isn't that the worst? That's like the worst
And I'm sitting there.
time to wait for them to come back and pretty much have, are you going away for life or not?
And then every single night, I was like, I got so anxious at the end of the day. I'm like, okay, I'm going home tonight. Next day, I wake up and I'm like, same routine. Bye, Milo. May never see you again. Have a nice day. On repeat. Finally, the 19th at 12 o'clock around noon, we get a call that the jury has reached a verdict, and my heart just sinks. I didn't know what it was going to be. I said a quick prayer, went into the bathroom, projectile vomited, went out there and started hearing the verdicts, and I'm like, thank God. Because I was scared that the jury was going to be scared to find me guilty.
And that's also an aspect that people don't understand either, is that people in the jury are human beings. They're not, they're supposed to be this, non-biased, like don't know anything. We're hearing this all for the
Fair
first
and
time.
impartial.
But let's be real. Your story was on every news outlet, printed on every newspaper, magazine. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing about what was going on with you. So to expect a jury to be completely like non-biased and I'm not hearing anything is bullshit. They are being persuaded in some form or fashion by what they're seeing. So yeah, and I had the same feelings about mine as well. That I thought, well, maybe they'll find me guilty just because to appease the institution and to appease the media and everything else because it was trial by media, just like you went through. You were guilty and you had to prove yourself innocent.
Exactly. That's one of my favorite ways to put it. Guilty until proven innocent, and we had to prove our innocence.
Yes.
And that's not the way our judiciary system works in the country, and it's wrong, and I don't agree with it. I think a lot of people do have to prove their innocence, though.
I think it happens more often than not because the media gets involved, and we all know the media is controlled by a certain entity and a certain portion of our politics, and they drive that narrative through the media, and they demonize whoever they want to demonize to get their narrative across. And unfortunately,
we were their scapegoats.
Yes, exactly. And that's the sad reality is, and I'm sure you recognize this, or I hope you do, is that it's not about you. They don't hate you. Kyle Rittenhouse, you're an emblem. You're a symbol for what they don't like, right? You yourself as a person, they don't know anything about you. They don't. Which is why they have to make up things about you, demonize you in such a way, because what you stand for is everything that they are against. So that's how they work. They're like, okay, we're going to take this, and it's disgusting. We're going to take this young 17-year-old kid. We are going to dehumanize him. We are going to make him into this character that everybody should hate. That, and it works. It drives a certain part of the population then is like, fuck Kyle Rittenhouse. And they don't know anything about you, which is, and that is where what we were talking about earlier is you going through that experience at such a young age and getting through it, and to be where you are now, man, like that drives such strength and builds such strength in an individual to be able to overcome that.
Yeah, I mean, it sucked. If I could go back and make it never happen, I would go back and make it never happen. I would, like, if I knew I would have been attacked and had to defend myself, with hindsight being 2020 as it is, I wouldn't have gone there. It wasn't worth it, and I still stand by that to the day. It isn't worth it because, like, the effects that came with it on my life, how hard it is to go out in public, like, I have like maybe 3 friends because of the trust issues it develops.
Yep. Oh yeah. So that is the next portion I want to get into, right? So we've already gone through 3 very hard experiences, right? One being the incident, which no person.
So I say it as this: I had 3 fights. I had the physical fight, the gun fight, I had the legal fight, and then the mental fight.
Yes, and that is the aftermath, right, of having to go through all this, your name being plastered. That is, and you get found, thank God, innocent, not guilty. But then that just invites all the snakes and everybody else that wants to come in and be like, hey, we want to help, we want to help you, and we want to do these things for you because, and once again, they're not viewing you as Kyle Rittenhouse. They're viewing you as, how can I make some money off this kid? Or how can I get what I can get off of this story? And they will manipulate you or try to in some form or fashion, and that comes from big media outlets too. They'll do the same thing. They will use you and have you come on and be like, we want you to, yeah, sure, tell your side of the story, but we want you to drive our narrative.
And
right?
I'd say right or left.
Yes, absolutely.
And I hate that for you, man, because
I've noticed that, like, I definitely am. There's some groups and organizations on the right that I know I have been used by, and then I know on the left they use me like crazy.
Oh yeah, there.
It's a mixture of the both, and I found that fine line right down the middle of what groups to associate with and which ones not to. The one group I do associate with, I'm the outreach director for Texas Gun Rights, and that's like that group and National Association for Gun Rights, because they align with me, and actually most of them are pretty good friends.
Good, good, and that's another thing. The aftermath of going through that, or just going through it, and then the aftermath of it, you learn who your true friends are, and then you also learn who the people who you thought were your friends, who take a step back, and are like, well, you're on your own.
Yep.
And that's where my wife and I were like, it's a blessing because you're able to cut the fat out of your life. It's like, okay, now we know where you stand, and that's fine. No hate towards you, but you are no longer allowed in our inner circle. Like, we get it. You will not have a backbone when times get tough, and that's fine. But you are not allowed in our inner circle anymore. And that's something that I'm sure you went through as well.
Yep.
What's tough though is Eddie's a grown man, already at the end of his career, right? Tons of trauma, just like you, but he's got wife, kids. For you,
I mean, I think
it's got to have been pretty lonely.
Yeah.
I mean,
it does get lonely at times, but like I didn't even think about that when your trial was happening. You have wife and kids.
Yeah.
I mean, if I went to prison, yeah, that's fine and dandy. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. I had a dog. Like, that's like a whole nother level of having to think, like, if you go to prison, like, it's not just affecting you. It's
affecting the family.
your family.
Well,
sources
it's
of
same with you,
income.
I'm sure. How were your parents during this whole time?
I'm sure they were scared.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it had a big, huge effect on them. Or anybody that was close to you. It's all of that affects everything in your life. And the stress that you're feeling carries over to the people that love you because they don't want to see anything happen to you.
Yeah, absolutely. They were definitely like probably terrified the entire time. I was more focused on not going to prison.
Yeah.
And like I actually told them, I'm like, I don't care. I don't want to hear what you're feeling right now. Which is why I said that, because I'm like, there's a lot happening. I don't need to focus on comforting multiple people. I need to focus on dealing with myself.
Yeah, and that is the right attitude to have, because that's what, and that's something that people don't talk about either, or people don't know, is like when you're going through that, the people that care about you the most and people that love you, they can sometimes be a hindrance as well, because they're going through it and then they're wanting to talk to you about it. Like, you're like, I'm facing life in prison. Like, I need to focus on, I'm in a fight right now and I cannot deal. If you're having issues with what's happening to me, you need to resolve those yourself, because I need to stay focused on what's going on. And that's a hard thing to do as well, because you do care about those people and you do want to help them, but you have to sort of pull yourself together and be like, nope, I'll deal with this afterwards.
Yep, absolutely.
what about when you got out, how you got began to get healthy, spiritually, mentally, physically you're already pretty healthy, but I think of the same thing. Have you found yourself, now you're in a whole new fight. You're in a fight for like your health and your growth and your maturity and becoming, you're a young man now. So
Being
it's
sued
like,
for $20 million.
yeah.
Well, yep, and that's the aftermath as well. It's the lawsuits that come in.
Were you sued?
Yeah, I was sued for $1 million by my first lawyer that I fired. So that's a whole nother story. But basically, this other lawyer worked for a nonprofit that they were going to defend me and cover all the bills. That was the agreement, the contract that was signed. But I came to find out that these lawyers had no intention of defending me properly. They wanted to leave me in prison for a year. before my trial, and basically they were just they were using my face.
Sounds similar to my situation.
There you go. I'm sure this is what. So they were using my face to collect money, saying it was for my legal defense, but they were keeping all that money and only giving my family 5% of it. So we found that my wife found that because I was locked up, found out what was going on. So we fired them. We let them go. And then they waited until I got found not guilty to then, now we're suing you for $1 million. But we settled that lawsuit last year and won because
That's good.
yeah, it's in the contract right here, and but that's the aftermath though, and then once again it's those parasites wanting to get every little ounce they can out of you, right?
I don't have any money, so
Well, neither do we.
I'm being sued for $20 million. Joke's on you. All the money's going to my attorney because I have to pay him because I don't want you guys to win because it's a big deal if they win because then I'm just like, nope. It shows that my ultimate goal is if you're acquitted, you should not be able to get sued for that stuff, whatever you're acquitted for.
Yeah, exactly.
You should fall under double jeopardy. So
let me ask you this. So after your trial, right, I'm sure there was a ton of news outlets that were, oh, we want you to come on and do an interview. How was that process for you?
It was interesting.
Who was guiding you through that at that time? Did you have anybody, I'm sure lawyers were?
There were people guiding me through that, former people that used to work for me. It was difficult, being 18, 19, going through all the media stuff. And I kind of treated it as how I testified.
You have to.
I was very uncomfortable at first in the camera. And now, I'm 21 now. It's been a couple years, 4 years since the incident. I talk about the shooting probably a little different than I used to.
Yeah, you're evolving. It's just called evolving. Yeah.
And people are like, "Whoa, that's heartless." That how he talks about the shootings. Sometimes I'm like, not really. I mean, 4 years ago, I have empathy. I have remorse. It's just growing in this and having to process what happened every day and deal with it. It's just different ways of how people cope.
Yeah. When you were doing the media stuff, I saw, because I was looking up some interviews that you did this whole week just to get an idea of everything that you'd been through. And I did see, you were on Tucker, some of the, so the right wing, but then I saw you did Pierce Morgan. And did you do any other sort of left-wing media?
I did a few.
What was the thought process on that and allowing yourself, because you had to know, at least your lawyers or whoever was guiding you at the time had to tell you hey, these people are against you, but you're going to go on there and let them question
Pierce
you.
Morgan was a couple months ago. I actually did that here in Florida in a studio van, but my media person who does all my booking said, hey, this isn't going to be an easy interview, but I would recommend it because it gives you to a different audience. I have that expanding reach, but he just started attacking me for no reason. And then he was like, how does it feel to kill somebody? How does it feel that you're profiting off of this? I'm like, well, you don't ask somebody who had to kill people how it feels to kill somebody. It's not a very respectful question.
Especially somebody that was 17 years old. And I actually watched that interview, and when he asked that question, because I was like, okay, this is going to be a rough one for Kyle, before I started the interview. But when he asked you that question, it infuriated me because I was like, what a piece of shit for this grown man, I don't know how old he is, 50s, whatever, to ask you're now, what?
21.
21. Either way, you were 17 at the time, to ask a young man how it feels to kill and profit off of it, these set up gotcha questions. I'm like, you are such a fucking bully to be asking this kid not, I'm sorry, I'm not calling you a man, but like young man, to be asking this young man who probably went one of the most traumatic situations in his life, you are bullying him on national TV. And to me, I'm like, it shows exactly what his character is. He does not give a shit
No.
at all. He's just doing it to he's the one profiting. Like, how does it feel how does it feel bullying a young man to profit?
Exactly.
That's what he was doing.
Yep. And what's funny is with the question about how it feels to kill somebody, I gave the answer like it's like something I told him the truth. It's something I deal with every single day. And he kept just digging. He kept asking like 3 or 4 times until I said finally, Pierce, this is an inappropriate question. I've already answered it.
I thought you did a tremendous job. And then I think the best is when he said you were illegally carrying that rifle and you shut him down real quick.
He didn't like that.
No, and he ended the interview not too long after that.
Yeah.
Which was awesome. And I think you did a tremendous job defending yourself and answering the questions correctly.
They got so mad. I was like, I'm gonna plug the book in this interview.
Oh, I saw that too.
Originally going to. I wasn't going to plug the book because it was a non-friendly interview, and I knew that. But he asked that question. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna plug the book because they didn't want me to plug it there. They're like, hey, just so you know, don't plug the book. And I'm like, they're gonna ask me that. Go to RittenhouseBook.com, by the way.
Nice, good. Screw them.
Yeah,
do what you want. Have you found with doing like media outlets like that, especially ones that are not favorable towards you, have you found after some of these interactions that you've had with them, like maybe after the interview, they're like, "Oh, you're not who we thought you were, or we actually like you"?
Well, I actually spent a week with some people from BBC from
yes,
London.
BBC.
I spent a week with them, and I took them shooting, and I made them shoot guns for the first time. And like I brought out all my big scary guns. I brought out my Glock 17 and my AR-15, my little AR pistol, and they were like, "These aren't that bad." And then I showed them the size of a 5.56, and they're like, "That's the round the media is lying to me about." And then I showed them a 6.5 Creedmoor, a common hunting round I use, and they're like, "That's way bigger. Nobody talks about that." I'm like, "Yeah, exactly, because it's all because
smoke and mirrors."
Yeah, they want to scare you and put fear. 223 is almost the same size as a 22, the bullet.
Yeah.
It's about the same diameter. Took them shooting, had a good time with them, and I actually changed their minds. Like they were like, "Kyle, you're actually really cool and really respectful and like nice. It was really good to spend time with you and get to know you, and we enjoyed shooting guns with you. We wish we can do this in London." And then of course I had to crack the 1776 jokes. And they were cool about it. They laughed.
But that's isn't that a cool experience?
Yeah.
Because I had the similar with 60 Minutes came to my house, and they were banging down our door for a while wanting an interview, and we were like, no, but same conversation I'm sure you had with your lawyers or whoever you were talking to. They're like, hey, this is a different audience, and also it just shows them I'm not scared to answer your questions. I have nothing to hide, even though I know you will probably edit and manipulate this interview in a certain fashion.
My BBC interview hasn't came out yet, but I recorded the entire thing.
Good.
And
Good
I
on
have
you.
everything recorded.
I don't have a very good experience with BBC. They definitely try to do a number on me during my trial.
They definitely try to do a number on both of us.
Yeah. It's comical though. They tried to demonize me during my trial. But 60 Minutes actually, I spent 3 days with them, and they came in and they were not hiding the fact that they did not like me. Did not, it was written all over the questions, and obviously the first question they asked was, "Do you enjoy killing people?" That was the starter of the interview. But I think it's a lot easier for me to answer that question than for you.
I mean, you can talk
because it's my job.
Necessary violence.
Well, my prior job as a SEAL what do you think that we're sent to go do? And I was like, I guess, just like a firefighter enjoys putting out fires, that's my job. And move on. So I can imagine those questions, for you as a 17-year-old. Going back to the Pierce Morgan interview, what a douche.
Major douche.
Yeah. No, I think that's good, man, that you are facing the adversaries as well. That shows a lot about your character. It shows that you're not scared to stand up for what you believe in, and that you're like, hey, I'm not guilty. I was acquitted.
Yep.
Even though you guys want to keep trying to dig into this, but to put out your side and give your answers.
Absolutely. That's pretty much my story.
So what are you doing now?
I'm the outreach director for Texas Gun Rights, advocating for the Second Amendment and working with National Association for Gun Rights, Texas Gun Rights, and just working on fighting the freaking gun grabbers, because the Second Amendment is under constant attacks.
Yeah.
And we've been pretty successful. We sued the ATF on forced reset triggers. And we won. We got a preliminary injunction, which was awesome. And that was one of our things. And then pistol braces and nice. And then we just keep fighting in the great state of Texas and pushing stuff out about candidates, like talking about these candidates who are gun grabbers and like, hey, this is their voting record, informing people. I've been going to events, like a lot of conventions lately, and just making connections with industry people and getting to know people in that, because
You're just working or doing talking events for Turning Point?
no. That's something on
Something
the side.
separate?
That's a side gig where
Okay.
I use that to talk about the importance of campus carry and arming young women. You have a 20-year-old daughter, and I think it's super crucial for our young women to be carrying firearms.
I could not agree more.
I don't want to see another female fall victim to a pedophile, and I would much rather see them defend themselves and that person never hurt somebody ever again.
Yep. I do think that more young women should be carrying, but I will also add on to that with the proper training.
Oh yeah, I think the Second Amendment is super important. I think it should not be impeded on at all. Should be no instructions. But I think if you're going to carry a gun, you should train with it.
Yes, you should be comfortable with it, and because it is a dangerous tool.
Oh
and,
yeah.
My
can
rule of thumb
attest
is,
to that.
yep, if you pull it, you're pulling it for a reason, and that is to end life.
Exactly.
It's not there to scare anybody. It's not there to show it, and because all that's going to do is elevate or escalate the situation that you're in. It's a last-minute decision, and it's a huge responsibility. And
Yep.
I teach courses to women and men, and I tell them this is probably one of the biggest responsibilities that if they're choosing to carry or conceal carry, I'm like, because if you do have to pull that gun, you're pulling it to end someone's life, and that is a huge responsibility that's going to fall on your shoulders. And so you have to be properly trained, not only to shoot and shoot correctly, but also have the correct mindset. Is if you can get out of the situation, get out of it.
Yep.
It's not I'm going to put myself or interject myself in a situation so I can pull the gun. It should be a last minute resort.
Exactly. 100%. And then people really need to understand the effects that come with it.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, I mean, I'll be ready when all this happens or something. I'm like, no, you're an idiot.
That is true. Yeah. Well, it's the same people. I mean, do you train martial arts in any fashion?
I just got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
All right.
I got really fat for a little bit, and I was just like,
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu will help out with that.
I've been shredding weight. I'm finally down to 190.
Nice.
I was at 230, and I was just like, man, I'm tired of being fat. The media was making fun of me, and social media was getting under my skin. And now I am doing another training for CrossFit. Do you know what the Murph Challenge is?
I do. Yeah, that was after a Navy SEAL, Mike Murphy, won the Medal of Honor. Yeah.
I'm doing the Murph Challenge with a guy by the name of Asa Miller.
Asa Miller. I'm not sure. I might know.
He was out of Team 5. He left the teams after the COVID stuff.
Okay. Good on you, man. That's what you
Yeah.
should be doing, like stuff like that, challenging yourself physically. But speaking to that, I'm sure when you started doing jiu-jitsu, there are people who think, oh, if I get into a fight or I get into a confrontation, I'm just going to go in the red and I'll handle it. And it's like, that is not how it's going to go if you do not know the foundations of actual fighting, at least to protect yourself in that manner. It's the same thing with the weapon. Just because you purchased a firearm does not mean when the time comes you are going to know how to use it.
Exactly.
You have to train to that and train to that mindset of pulling that gun because you experienced it, just like we were talking about earlier with the auditory and everything else as you were going through it. Your fight or flight kicks in, and you are no longer in control of what is going on up in your brain, right?
You're in just pure survival mode.
Yes.
And
so
a lot of people, they freeze, and that's how people end up dying.
Yeah. And so if you don't train your brain to react in a certain manner when those things happen, your brain and your body's going to resort to the last thing it knows. And if you haven't trained, guess what? It's
Exactly. I know a lot of guys who train on the range, and they're some of the best shots I know, but they don't train mentally. And like, you could be the best shooter on the range, but something happens, you can just freeze up and like panic.
Well, it's a lot different when the range is two-way. When it's a two-way range, right?
Yeah.
Those paper targets, yeah, that's great. When bullets are whizzing back at you, that's when it becomes real.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's good, man. I'm glad you're out doing that, and then you're obviously doing some other speaking engagements as well. What is your aspirations going forward?
I don't know yet. I like what I'm doing right now, advocating for gun rights, and I haven't quite figured out what I want to do with my life. I'm still working on that. I'm still young. I'm 21, so I got to figure it out relatively quickly now. When I was 17, I was like, oh, I have time. Now it's like, all right, I got to figure this out within the next couple months or year.
You still got some time. You still believe me.
Well, the gray hairs are coming in, so.
That's
when you're 21 though, like when I was 21, I'm like, time is ticking. I gotta figure this out. I relate with that.
Yeah, I mean,
at 40, I look back and I go, man, I had lots of time. What's cool, man? What's cool? The coolest things that I hear going on in your life, jiu-jitsu. I think that's like a therapy in a sense.
it is one of the most therapeutic things I do, and then Krav Maga as well.
Yeah, and doing that, shooting, training, in this position, you're like for right now, and working with these 2A guys, but also just you going. I'm reading Ephesians 1-4, and I'm digging in, and I'm not trying to be a theologian. I'm just trying to know God more, and I'm being consistent with it. I think that in and of itself is going to be the biggest proponent in your life going forward. Even if you don't figure out what you need to do or what your passion is for another 10 years, like if you're doing those things daily, man, I've a lot of hope for where you're gonna go.
Yeah, I try to get out on the mat maybe 2 to 3 times a week, which is really hard when you travel.
Yeah.
Because it took me a while to find this gym. It's a cop gym, a cop and military gym. So nobody messes with me there, and everybody's friendly. But I go on a travel, and I'm like, I want to go and roll at these different places, but I just don't know these places.
Yeah, I want it, honestly, if I was you.
It's like, what if the instructor doesn't like me, he uses me as an example, and then an accident happened on the mat?
Yeah.
Even less than instructor, maybe just, some spastic white belt in some place that has...
Talking about me?
No, but like having really good guys to train with, 100%.
Yeah, if you've got a place, man, and you're enjoying it, then stick with that. And I know like that's a big fear. It's like, oh, what if I go to a place and they already have their thoughts and views about me, and they're going to do something to me that I'm not going to like just because of what they think. And I think that's going to be, and that's a natural fear that comes with everything that you've went through. I would just, my and I'll just give you some advice from me, just from someone who's been through a similar situation, is don't let that fear stop you from doing what you need to do, okay? You keep pushing forward, man. Keep doing the things that you're doing. Put God first. You're doing good for others, right? You're passing on stuff that you've learned to others and mentoring them, like the 18-year-old that you talked about earlier. That's huge. And just be yourself, man. Don't be afraid to be yourself. My big fear, not only for you, but it's the same thing for me, is because you'll have people that interject themselves in your life because of the situation that you went through, and they will interject yourselves and try to drive you in a certain direction to make you a character that really isn't you.
Yep.
And I think you need to protect yourself from that more than others. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle that you sit on, right, left, independent. It doesn't matter. You be who you want to be. You have your whole life ahead of you. You're a young man, and believe me, what happened to you is never going to leave. That is always going to be part of your story.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a hard thing to overcome as well sometimes, where it's like, I don't want to be known as the 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse.
I've accepted that.
Exactly.
It took me a while, but I'm like, I need to accept this as reality.
And I had to as well, as a 40-something-year-old grown man. And as soon as you can accept that as your reality and push forward and start and keep doing good, you are going to change people's minds. It's going to happen slowly over time.
Hopefully. I know I've changed a few minds. I've had pretty good conversations with some raging liberals, and I've been able to change their minds. It's been hard. Not completely. There's still some of the liberals that I've been able to change their minds on relates to self-defense. They're still iffy about guns.
Yeah.
But we're getting there.
You'll have that, And then the people that you're not going to change their minds, the people that refuse to see the truth, those aren't people you really want in your life anyways. So
Exactly. They're people I wouldn't go and have a beer with.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the mindset you need to have. Well, dude, it was awesome talking to you, man.
Absolutely.
You're an amazing young man. You've been through more than most at your age, and it's awesome to see how well you're doing and how you're pushing forward. And I'm excited to. I'll be following you, and I'll put this out there, man. If anytime you're struggling or have anything like certain thoughts going on, or because I know it's never an easy path. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna give you my number after this. You can always reach out to me, man.
Absolutely.
Talking to somebody helps more than you know.
And honestly, I would I mean, Eddie, I can't think of anyone else that's been in such a similar situation as you. I think it's a God deal. That you come in here today and getting connected with Eddie.
Absolutely.
And we're going to go ahead and head over to Stronghold after this to the range and start throwing some lead down range, man.
Awesome.
Be a good time.
Awesome. I brought everything.
Everything. Good.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me on.
All right.
Okay.
Out.
Out.